And we are live. Hello and welcome to this top story of the Benefit of the Doubt podcast, Mountain Man edition, because neither one of us has bothered to shave in about 2 weeks. We are here to talk about Twitter, about Elon Musk. We are here to talk about Elon Musk's pending acquisition of Twitter, and we have some feelings, and we're not really sure how those feelings are going to shake out. So we're just going to kind of unpack it all as we go here on the Benefit of a Doubt podcast. So joining me this evening is co-producer Cliff. How you doing this evening?
I'm feeling scruffy, so not tired, just scruffy.
Your dog is feeling scruffy too in the
I
background
know.
there. That little jerk just started barking as we hit the
Literally
air.
as we
So
went
that
live.
was nice.
It's like, of course, because a neighborhood dog started
Dead
barking,
quiet until we push the go live button, and now he's going. So appreciate that. Anyway, thanks very much, Pooch. Anyway, so we are talking Twitter tonight, and we are going to be interrupted by a tech somewhere about halfway in between as well. So stay tuned for that as well. And we're going live in public because typically we do these shows as an unlisted video. But today is Friday, and Friday is the day that I live stream. And we were originally going to do this instead of a live stream, but then Cliff said, can we put it off? And I said, sure. So I went ahead and did a live stream anyway. And now we're here doing this, and it's public. And I hope people stop by to say hi because it's fun. It's Friday. Why not? What else are you going to do on a Friday night than come watch two idiots talk about Twitter?
And my my putting off things is to the listeners' benefit, because now you get two for the price of one.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I mean, it's great. It's great that everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. And speaking of things that were probably not supposed to happen, let's talk about Elon Musk and Twitter. So just to kind of recap, I don't want to, I've had this thing at Digital Trends and a few of the stories that we published this week that we've had a little bit too much assumed knowledge. Like we have a little bit too much where we assume people know what's going on. So I'm going to assume for a moment that nobody has any idea what's going on. About a week ago, I'm going to recap it as best I can because there's a lot going on. So a couple of weeks ago, Elon Musk was presumably bored and decided, hey, what if I bought Twitter? And so he went ahead and bought a 9 something ish percent stake.
It was 9% stake, yeah.
9 and then some percentage point, 9 and then some decimal points. But anyway, so he became the largest shareholder at Twitter, and they offered him a board seat, and he said, no thanks, I wouldn't pass the drug test. So a few days later, another company stepped up and actually bought up to 10%. So they became the largest shareholder. Elon Musk was still not on the board, but then he started kicking around the idea, it's nice having a big part of Twitter, but what if I just owned the whole thing? What if I just, I don't know, bought Twitter for $44 billion with a B dollars? What if I did that? And I liked one tweet that I saw earlier today that said, isn't it nice how Elon Musk doesn't have any real money when it comes to paying taxes, but suddenly he has real money when it comes to buying Twitter?
Right, exactly.
Because it's basically the same kind of nebulous money here, people. So anyway,
as a fat guy, this is kind of how the way I thought of it, because I do have some experience with this. Where
with being a fat guy?
Being a fat guy.
Right.
Not buying Twitter. No.
Okay.
So when you order dessert, and let's just say it's a cheesecake specifically, because I think it's a good example. And you get, you have like your expectation for the size of it, what your heart really wants, and then you get it, and it's like half an inch across, and it costs $10, and then you think, why didn't I just buy the whole cake?
Right. That's true.
That's kind of how I think Elon Musk felt. He had his percentage, and then he thought, that's just not satisfying enough. I want the whole.
What if I just bought the whole cake?
Yeah.
So anyway, exactly. I that's by the way not where I thought you were taking that analogy, but it works. So anyway, then Elon Musk said, well, let's just buy the whole thing. And he offered $54 and some odd cents per share, which was at the time was a 54% premium above the market value of each share of the company. And that totaled out to about $44 billion. And Twitter said, really? I'm not feeling that. But then the way I see it is the board got together and said, look, we're not making any money here, and he's offering us money for things that we're not making money with. We should probably take money. And so
Money is
Twitter
good.
just,
Money is good.
yeah, money is good, especially when it comes to investors. And so now what's going on is that the board has essentially, I believe it has essentially accepted the offer. And so now we're in the 6-month grace period between when Elon says I want to buy Twitter and when the board actually has to hand over the keys to the kingdom and say, here it is, good luck. Now, Elon Musk has made several different predictions slash promises slash statements. And honestly, like, okay, so Elon Musk was never not on Twitter. Like he's a very prodigious Twitter user, but and it might just be me because of like how all this like shook out over the last 2 weeks, but it seems like he is on Twitter a hell of a lot more than he was before. Now, maybe I just wasn't paying attention before because I didn't really have to, because honestly, a lot of the stuff that he says doesn't really make a lot of sense, or taken out of context doesn't
And
really,
a lot of the
isn't
things
really
that he has
good.
said, or at least a few things, have actually gotten him in trouble too. Like
Right.
his oh, it was something to do with I believe was it SpaceX or was it Tesla stock? I don't
I think it
remember.
was Tesla stuff. Are you
Tesla
talking
stock.
about like when he actually got like in real trouble and his
Correct.
lawyers said you're not allowed to tweet anymore?
Yes.
I believe it was a tweet that said he was going to buy up all the Tesla stock and take the company private so that he could focus on. That was a couple of years ago, and like I think what
SEC
happened.
actually took him to court about it, and then that's when his
Yeah.
lawyers said you can't tweet anymore.
You can't tweet anymore before you run it by us. And Elon said, oh, yeah, totally. I'll do that. Don't worry. And then, yeah, so like, and then he was going to quit Twitter, and that lasted for about a day. And then, yeah, so I mean, like, Elon Musk and Twitter have a long history together.
Absolutely.
So, and I don't think that this really should come as a shock to anybody, because honestly, if there was one person who was going to buy Twitter, it was probably Elon Musk. Let's be perfectly honest.
And here's what's funny too. I don't
Yeah.
know if you follow this account, but there is a Twitter account called Bored Elon Musk, which for a while was one of my favorite Twitter accounts, and it would posit these ridiculous things that also were. It's not something that he would say, but you also couldn't put it past him.
Right.
And now that Twitter account has basically just been rendered obsolete because he's just saying ridiculous things all the time. They just
Right.
in fact, I haven't seen a tweet from that account anymore. So like maybe they just went. I can't do
Our
any
work
better
here
than
is
the real
done.
deal.
So now it should be mentioned before we go any further that I don't think Cliff and I have any real strong feelings about this either way. So we're going to be unpacking this kind of in real time on the podcast. So it's very possible that we'll say some things that are controversial or stupid or both. So just bear with us, because this is, I mean, Twitter is not exactly our area of expertise, and neither are business acquisitions. So you're going to have to bear with us a little bit. The first rule of performance is never apologize, and I just broke that rule. So
it's also
let's go
a
with
very
it.
fluid situation.
Yeah, it is a very fluid situation. Now, I just want to start off by saying that at the end of the day, this probably is not going to affect my personal Twitter usage all that much. And I don't think it's going to affect a lot of people's Twitter usage all that much. But what I will say is, despite that, I don't feel good about this. I don't really feel good about giving Elon Musk the keys to the kingdom. And that's for several different reasons. And I want to see if I can lay these out. And we'll talk about your feelings in a moment here, Cliff. But part of the reason why this doesn't feel really great is because since the acquisition has been made public / been accepted, a lot of what Elon Musk has been tweeting about has involved freedom of speech. And before we go any further, I am legally required, not legally, but like my brain will not allow me to proceed before I say this. Freedom of speech has nothing to do with Twitter. There is absolutely nothing about Twitter that the constitutional right for freedom of speech, they are not related at all. So if you say something on Twitter, you can get banned, and that's not freedom of speech, or that's not suppression, or maybe it is, but it's okay. Twitter can
Because
do
it's a
that.
private company. It's as simple as that.
It's a private company. It is not a government entity. So
Correct.
before we start going all hog crazy about freedom of speech, we need to understand that basic principle that freedom of speech has nothing to do with what you say on Twitter, unless what you say on Twitter has to do with a government entity. I can say on Twitter, I can say on this podcast right now, I hate Joe Biden. I think he's an old man who never should have run for president in the first place. And you know what Joe Biden can do about that? Absolutely, precisely, dick. So anyway, or actually, what I should say is, can Joe Biden throw me in jail for that? No. Could Joe Biden show up at my house and punch me in the face for saying that? Absolutely. And you know what? I would probably deserve it. But so
Well, there are
I
there
just
are certain things like libel and laws
yelling fire in a
that
crowded theater. Yeah.
correct that still apply because it is a public message, and while it's not
Right.
a place for that's journalism necessarily, those
Right.
laws I believe still apply. So there are some rules that govern speech on
Right.
Twitter
So now
and social media in general.
moving on from that concept, one of the reasons that I don't feel good about this is because not only is the future owner of Twitter confusing freedom of speech with the ability to say whatever you want on a public platform, but one of the reasons that Twitter has been monitoring and banning some accounts and suppressing tweets and stuff like that stems from the idea of misinformation, which is objectively not a great thing to be putting out on the internet. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can get bad information on the internet, and I will make an argument that this podcast is probably one of them in some cases. But when you are, and this is a politically charged issue, so I'm trying to be as delicate as I can here, but when you are spouting fake bullshit, pardon my French, there is a responsibility. There can be a responsibility, and there kind of is a responsibility for a platform to say, what you're saying is are lies and bullshit, and we shouldn't allow it because you could eventually put people's lives in danger if you keep saying it.
Right.
So now, is there an element of personal responsibility involved with that? Absolutely. Yes. If I come on this podcast and I say that the Democrats are negotiating with aliens to sell off Nebraska so the rest of us can live, there is no truth to that.
That we know of.
Should I be allowed there? But there might be. No, I'm just kidding. Should I be allowed to say it? Probably not. And if I were to say that on a platform where hundreds of thousands of people listen to me, that could get dangerous really fast, especially if you happen to live in Nebraska. But anyway, so it seems like Elon Musk wants to walk back. Hi, tech enthusiast. Anyway, it seems like Elon Musk wants to walk back some of that stuff. And again, will that affect my Twitter usage? Probably not a whole hell of a lot, but it will enable other potentially bad actors, and you can make the argument about who decides who the bad actors are. Fine. I grant you that argument. Maybe we're not the ones to make those judgments, but I think that will enable a lot more of this stuff that is not good to happen more.
And I think even from like a shareholder's perspective, right? When you start thinking about the content that comes onto a platform, and when you start coming under scrutiny for the content that's on that platform, and then you have things like, let's just say, Congress calling you in as the the principal in the leadership of that company, you start being hauled in for like questioning because why aren't you, watching and regulating the content, for an example, then
right.
Financially it makes sense for that company to start in ratcheting down, what content is shown
Yeah.
And on some start offering more control, or start taking a little bit more control of it, because otherwise, the Wild West can actually that some platforms can actually affect your bottom line, because you may
Right.
have a mass exodus of users, and just because of something that a few people said, and then it got spread, and whether that's misinformation or
Whatever you want to
other
call it.
kinds of content. Correct. So it's not just about speech, right, in
So
itself.
yeah, and totally, totally. And so that kind of covers my feelings on the topic. I'm kind of curious as to where you're landing on all this, because I think you're actually a little bit more okay with it than I
Well, I have such mixed feelings about Elon Musk.
am. Yeah.
I think, and I'm
True
sure
story.
that's. I mean, I've seen some people call him a genius on Twitter. I've seen some people call him a douchebag. Pardon my English, but I mean, these are
Those
just the
two things are not mutually exclusive, by the way.
true,
In fact,
true.
they often go hand in
And
hand, if I'm totally honest.
and
But
Elon Musk has always been a little bit unfiltered. He's also on the spectrum.
a
In
little bit unfiltered.
Yeah, but
That's a polite way of putting it.
autistically on the spectrum, and
Hmm.
so he relates to people and topics a little bit differently.
Yeah.
He also definitely, I think, I would consider purposefully probably tries to do a lot of that Steve Jobsian, what's the term, the reality distortion field, right?
Mm.
And especially when you're talking about when companies like SpaceX, Tesla, and even the Boring Company were smaller, you sort of build the expectation that then you put the cart before the horse to build the road to get there.
Yeah.
And it's historically it's been successful for him.
Yeah. Totally.
It's a little bit different now because he's not taking over a small Tesla or a small SpaceX. He didn't found either of those companies. Those companies
Right.
already existed.
Right.
Twitter is a known entity that's been around since what, 2007, I think.
Something like
Something
that.
like
Yeah.
that. It's been around since the aughts, and it's been, in my opinion, a pretty as an avid Twitter user, and it's probably by far what I'm active the most on.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's been pretty stagnant in terms of growth, and change, and Twitter has actually wrested a lot of control over the years that I've used it, right? Because they've gone away from allowing or supporting third party development
Mm.
of clients, for example, like they used to. They've
Right.
added ads, and in a lot of ways, they've kind of felt rudderless. They've been trying to figure out how to make money, and they're always trying new things. And every time they make a change to the algorithm or how things are posted, and there's a lot of things that the Twitter user base tends to get really pissed off, because I think there's like that
Right.
core set of users, right, that have been there for most of the time. And so Elon Musk, and this gets back to how I feel about this, right? So that it's been pretty stagnant as a platform, and I don't want it to go away, because I feel like when things get stagnant is when you have something purchased, like when Yahoo purchased Tumblr and then basically destroyed it. I mean, it's still there, but it doesn't have the active user base that it used to, and that's kind of what I was thinking about.
Mm.
It could have been purchased by somebody else in a hostile takeover. At least with Elon Musk, you've got somebody who I think is relatively innovative, and as a
Yes.
private company, you are able to, I think, steer the ship a little faster than when you're dealing with a bunch of shareholders.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
so there are advantages to that.
Yes.
And because Elon Musk is passionate about, it seems like he's very passionate, as you said, he's on it all the time.
About the platform. Yeah.
Right, about the platform. And so in that respect, I'm kind of excited to see, someone who historically has been pretty successful with his other projects,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
is passionate about this take, because right or wrong for the things that he says online, it's actually going to create movement, I think, and because of his hype machine, might actually bring users back to the platform and bring new users onto it, right? So that
Yeah.
there's that effect, the halo effect with all that. I mean, what does it go back to, what's the saying? No publicity,
No such
bad
thing as bad
publicity.
publicity.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
So that aside, yeah, Elon Musk has no qualms about being controversial.
Right.
Is not afraid about to say things that he thinks.
Hmm.
Sometimes probably to his not to his detriment.
Right.
like we discussed with the stuff with the SEC and getting in trouble and um, with that financial side. So, I mean, that could potentially if negatively affect Twitter in the future once he takes over. I do wonder how much time he's going to have to be really hands on with it, considering all the other things he has going on. We'll see. Um, I don't, I don't, I don't really agree with his assessment of freedom of speech being an issue. I kind of like the idea of his wanting to make Twitter his view of Twitter, and then wanting to make it more of that as sort of a an open forum for discussion without a lot of controls across nations,
Yeah.
right? Because yeah, I mean, there are some. I mean, we can just talk about some examples of the things that Twitter has done over the past few years, rightly or wrongly. That I think that depends on where you stand. I'm
Right.
not going to say anything, but like Donald Trump
Well,
for
but
Donald
before
Trump for
before we get into that, I just
Mhm.
want to double down on one of the points that you made. Uh, just because, like, I don't want it to be thought that I'm, you know, really upset about this because, like I said, I really, for the most part, I kind of don't care, but it is a big deal. But one of the things that you did say, and I wholeheartedly agree with, is that Elon Musk, for all that he is, has a very strong record of success. Like, a lot of what he does works, and for that reason, I am also kind of excited to see what he brings to the platform. That being said, I'm one of some of the things that he has tweeted since he completed the purchase has been a little bit kind of has been questionable. Let's say. I mean, let's
Yeah,
just
let's
go
just
out.
read off some of those. I'm curious as to which ones you're referring to specifically.
Oh boy, I was not ready to answer that question.
Well, I'll talk
Um,
about one that I just thought was kind of funny, but it seemed to make
yeah, go
people.
ahead.
I'm not reading from it, but it was something to the effect of I'm thinking about purchasing Coca-Cola Corporation and putting the cocaine back in Coke.
Right, which
Okay,
is
I
kind
think
of
it's funny only because he's basically right to me. Like in my mind, putting myself in his shoes, I see that as he's making fun of the uproar that people are making about him buying Twitter and sort of being facetious about it by saying,
right,
buying something else that's beloved and you know, taking it back to a place where probably no one wants it to go.
right.
Um, and it's funny. Should he have said it? Probably not.
Sure.
Especially with
It's just
the
see, the
laser
thing is,
focus that he has right now. But it's just that's him. Like
yeah,
have you ever seen him try to be funny on stage? It's always awkward. He's just kind of an awkward guy.
he is. He is. And I mean the thing about like buying coke and putting the cocaine back in it. Or see, I don't think that's funny. I just think that's kind of stupid. But I mean,
It
that's just
is.
me. But that's just me. But okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of scroll through his feed in here. And one of the most recent things he said was I just had it and I lost it. Oh, the far left hates everyone, themselves included. But then he followed that up by saying, "I'm no fan of the far right either. Let's have less hate and more love." Okay, I'm on board with that. I'm totally good with that. But I think what's happened, and I don't think this is necessarily Elon's fault, but what's happened with this purchase is it has become politically charged, and I'm not necessarily sure it had to, because I mean there is the perception that Twitter is biased against conservatives and Republicans and
Right.
whatnot,
Right.
and maybe to a certain extent it probably is. And now Elon Musk is definitely more right of center than left,
Hmm.
so
I would call
it
him.
seems
I would
like
call him leaning libertarian. Actually.
like a lot of people are freaking the hell out because
Right.
it's kind of like if I don't know if the president went from being a Democrat to a Republican. People are kind of freaking out about that,
Hmm.
and vice versa. For the record. So I mean, like that's so I think that's a big part um of the consternation that goes along here. Now, some of the other things that he said, and we're getting into the free speech again. The extreme antibody reaction from those who fear free speech says it all, which he followed up with, by free speech, I simply mean that which matches the law. I'm against censorship that goes far beyond the law. If people want less free speech, they will ask the government to pass laws to that effect. Therefore, going beyond the law is contrary to the will of the people. Reasonable argument, but again, not free speech. Okay,
Correct.
so and then like here's more free speech. Free speech. I hope that even my worst critics remain on Twitter because that's what free speech means. Um, More free speech.
I think what he's actually saying when he, I know I keep trying to put myself in his shoes, but what else can I do? Because I mean, we're all interpreting it through our own experience. I'm actually not doing that so much as just thinking about things that he said in the past and knowing his libertarian leanings,
Right.
and the fact that he wants to make his other statements about trying to make Twitter more of an open, secure communication platform.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about freedom of speech in terms of it being an open forum, right?
Right.
Um, where where that's where I have to imagine that even though it's a private company, the advisors within whatever what the I assume there's still going to be a board of some kind, and lawyers and things like that are still going to say, we as an organization still have to prevent against like governmental organizations, especially foreign government organizations, spreading misinformation,
Right.
like Russia did in the 2016 era elections. And that's not political. That is just something that's verified by the government to have happened, not only on Twitter but also on Facebook and on other social media platforms. So
Right.
I think that's where a lot of people are freaking out about it. It's like, okay, if it's an open forum, does that mean, like you were saying, does that mean that it's just going to be like the Wild West again, and it's going to be,
Can
you're not going to be able to
can we
trust
start yelling
anything that
fire in a crowded theater?
exactly, exactly.
So and now one of the things that he did say, I just scrolled past it because I was looking for not free speech stuff, because God, his Twitter feed is so politically charged right now.
It is.
But like one of the things that he said was he wants to get rid of spam bots, and authenticate all real humans. I'm for that.
Me too.
Like I am absolutely for that. Now that being said, spam bots do have their place, ladies and gentlemen. The weekend. Uh, but in fact, I might in the high quality version, I might actually just dub that over. But like some spam bots do have, and I shouldn't say spam bots, I should say bots. Some bots do have a purpose, and that's cool. But like I think anybody who is able to accurately verify their identity should have, some type of check mark next to their name.
I agree.
Whether it's blue or otherwise, because one of the downsides with Twitter is you can ban an account, but as long as you have a different email address, you could fire a new one right back up. I have like 16 Twitter accounts that I only use one or two, kind of. I don't even really use benefit of a doubt all that much, but I have like a whole crapload of Twitter accounts, and there's really no reason for it. Like I should be able to use just my dead technology, but I've had some ideas in the past that I wanted to go with, and none of them caught steam, and that's fine.
Well,
but still,
there's
still
funny
own
stories of like the professional basketball player Kevin Durant, who, and I'm
Okay.
sure this has happened with other people. This is just one that I recall where he has his I can't remember what his Twitter handle is, but so
His
he
Kevin
has
Durant
his
handle.
verified one, but then it turns out there was an article that I think took 6 months, 6 to 10 months of like research in order to sort of nail down. But I believe it was actually the Ringer that, which is now a Spotify property, that came out with this. But basically, Kevin Durant had 2 or 3 different, basically burner accounts, where he was
Okay.
going out and criticizing media and people that were adding his, responding to his main account about things and criticizing them, and
Oh, that's funny.
it's so funny. And then he got called out on it, and so I mean that is sort of that's the thing that people who are like high profile individuals, I'm sure, do all the time. Is he just happened to be the one that got caught. You create
Right.
the fake accounts that aren't verified and say what you really want because you can't say it otherwise, and maybe
Right.
that's in a way what at the same time, Elon Musk is hoping to get rid of it, but also encourage, I guess as a high profile individual, you still don't, especially if you have someone that's running your PR for you, say more
Right.
of the things through your verified account, but get rid of the spam accounts that people create that just can say whatever they want because they're anonymous and there's no consequences, right? So that
Right.
people can just be themselves on Twitter a little bit more. I see both sides of it. So
Yeah.
again, I don't have a lot of strong feelings about this. I understand, I think, some of what Elon is talking about here. It's just, it's it's a tightrope to walk, right?
It is. And the
Because
question is Elon prepared to walk that tightrope?
correct.
Because I'm not sure he is. I think
Yeah.
I think he is very much a tweet first, ask questions later type of guy. And it kind of makes me wonder, like, when you're dealing with something as delicate as public discourse, is he the right person to deal with that? And before we answer that question and talk about one other
Mm.
aspect before we wrap things up, it is time to do a little tech. Yeah. So, speaking of no repercussions, my children have turned stealing my plugs and cables into an art form because they will charge up their devices, maybe lose the cord behind their bed, maybe take it to a friend's house and leave it there, whatever the case. They are always coming to, they know where I keep my wall warts, and they're always coming and emptying them out. And like every 3 months or so, I have to walk around and like pick up all the different wall warts and cables, and bring them back to my desk. And that's especially problematic when I'm trying to test like a review device and I need to use the proprietary cable that came with the proprietary plug in order to get the 65 watts of charging for like the OnePlus 10 Pro, for
Talking
example.
about you, VUCA charging.
So I solved that problem, and I want to show you
Mm.
exactly how I did it. This here is an Anker 20-watt charger. This here is a USB C to Lightning cable. This here is a USB C to USB C cable.
Sure, that's not spaghetti.
And this here is an Apple tag.
Ah.
They're all duct taped together. So, and as you can see, I duct taped it in such a way that you can like run the cables through, and you can make them longer or shorter. So basically, like the way it works is, you keep these end over at this end here, and then whichever one you need. And no, you can't charge more than one device at a time. And no, that's not my problem. So you just plug in that, you plug in the other end, and you're good. And when you're done with that, you need to charge up your iPad. You plug in that, you plug in the other end, and you're good to go. You're getting 20 watts of charging, so it's not slow charging. It's
Wait,
fairly
are
fairly
you
robust.
are you doing a tech yeah for duct tape?
I'm doing a tech yeah for a thing that involves duct tape. Yes. So I will even, if you DM me, I will even tell you how I made this little attachment thing that allows you to slide the cables through using only duct tape. It's not that hard, actually. Basically, you just make a sleeve with the sticky side facing out, and then you tape all three sleeves together. So that, and then same thing over here. You make a sleeve with a sticky side,
Hmm.
say, and then you do like a little thing, and then you do another little thing around it.
I was gonna
It's
say
really interesting.
it
And
almost
for
looks
those
like
of you,
leather. Like it's thick. Like you didn't just use like
oh
one
no,
strip of duct tape.
oh no, I'm not messing around with this. Now, for those of you who are listening to the high quality feed, sorry, but I'm kind of like waving these things around. But basically, what it is it's an Anchor 20-watt charger. 20-amp charger, Jesus. Um, and it's an app, and it's an AirTag, and it's an Anchor. I want to say it's a 6-foot iPhone or iPad cable, and then like a 3-foot USB C to USB C cable, and they are all attached together. So now, when my children says I need to charge my phone, I can whip out the iPhone and say your charger is right over there. Go get it. So, is this stupid and overbuilt? Yes, absolutely. Is it using a cannon to kill a mosquito? Kind of. It kind of is, because I mean, I'll be honest. I have a bunch of wall chargers and I have a bunch of cables, but I was sick of them stealing mine. So, is this stupidly expensive for what it is? Absolutely. This wall charger is $20. Each of these cables were about like $5 a piece, and the AirTag is about $30. So I mean, all told, I'm holding about $60 worth of charging equipment in my hand right now. And but the nice thing is, my kids will not be able to lose this, and they'll be able
Oh,
to
ye of
charge
little faith.
and they'll be able to charge whatever device they need to charge, because they both have iPads and they both have USB-C phones. So again, is it stupid and over-engineered and overbuilt? Absolutely. I will be the first to admit that. But if you want to build one for yourself, maybe you have trouble keeping track of your cables and chargers. I'm not going to judge. Whatever you want to use this for, that's fine. Plus, since these both belong to my kids, when we travel, these will go into their backpacks, and then I will know where my kids are. So that is a benefit. So yeah, all told, like I said, it's about $60, give or take, with everything included. Oh, there's also a little Apple Tag, little
Oh, the little case for it, the little
the rubber
dog
case
tag.
for it, yeah. Which I
Yeah.
want to say I got like a pack of 4 of these for like $10 or something. Links to all of this stuff will be in the show notes and in the description down below if you're watching on YouTube. So go check that out. And if you pick some up, you'll be helping out the show and you'll have my thanks. But for now, let's talk about Musk Bros.
Hmm.
Because along with Elon Musk on Twitter, we also have to deal with Elon Musk acolytes or Elon Musk fans or whatever you want to call them. Now, in one particular case, Elon Musk tweeted a meme from the Joe Rogan Experience with,
Oh God.
I don't remember her name. She is the Twitter's lead. Let me look this up here real quick. Sorry. The lead advocate for like, I don't want to say free speech, but for, okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to Google Twitter lawyer that Elon Musk threatened. And after targeting Twitter lawyer. Okay, so it was one of the first videos that was one of the. Okay, so the lawyer's name, and I apologize for not knowing this off the top of my head, and I don't think I know how to pronounce her name either, because it's not. So it's Vijaya Gadde. I don't know. It's Vijaya Gadde is it. So the top censorship advocate at Twitter. So basically, it's one of Twitter's lawyers who deals with like censorship issues, basically. And Elon Musk tweeted a meme of her talking to some dipshit on the Joe Rogan Experience. Pardon my French. And it was about bias and stuff like that. Long story short, the lawyer started getting like death threats and racial remarks tossed at her by the Elon Musk faithful. And try to take a moment to understand this is a Twitter employee. Elon Musk will soon be her boss.
Right.
I mean, maybe not for long, but but I mean, still, like, Elon Musk is actively calling out, and this is the most prominent example, but he has done this for several of the top brass at Twitter, basically publicly called them out on Twitter, and not intentionally, but because he did that, the Musk bros all started diving in and, tossing, F-bombs and other not fun language their direction.
Sometimes the public personalities are not even the worst people. It's like Justin Bieber's followers or Elon Musk's followers.
Most of the time,
actually the most are the worst.
No, it's their fans.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not gonna disparage fandom. I mean, Lord knows I'm fans of several different things, including the Chicago Cubs and the Blackhawks and whatnot. But like in my case, that fandom is fairly tempered
Benign
by
fandom.
reality. Basically, I'm not going to, my identity isn't defined by the things that I am fans of. But let's not forget that fan is short for fanatic, and so like
Well, Adam, that's because you're a decent human being. I can
right.
confirm them.
And thank you, and back at you. But the people on Twitter are not necessarily the most decent human beings, especially those. And I no, not that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. Because look, Elon Musk has 87 million followers. Chances are there's a couple bad apples in there,
Right.
and it's not the majority. There's good people on both sides. No, it's not the majority of Elon Musk fans, but there are Elon Musk fans. When you have 87 million
The
followers,
vocal minority is
if
usually the
even
worst.
if so what's the math here? If even 0.5% of his followers are a-holes, that's still
It's like 10,000 people.
no, it would be
Ten.
eight. So 87 million followers, 1% of that would be 870,000. So 0.5% of that would be 435,000 people.
God.
That's 0.5% of his following. If 0.5% of his following are bad people, that's 400,000 people that follow him that would just assume spit on your face as put out the. If your clothes are on fire, they just assume piss on you. Then put out the fire.
The size of a medium-sized city.
Yes,
like a Baltimore.
Yes, and by calling these people out, Elon Musk is inadvertently, probably, setting 400,000 people on these individuals that have no recourse. They have no way to fight back these people. They have nothing that they can do. It's just, the other day, Jeremy Johnson, who is the editor-in-chief of Android Central, made the mistake of replying to an Elon Musk tweet. Let me pull it up and like make sure I'm doing the right thing.
Even the Teslarati are sometimes awful.
You know what? It was the Coke thing. It was the Coke thing, putting Coke thing. And he just replied back and said, what the hell is wrong with you, bro? And let's see, how many replies does that have right now? Let me see. 39 likes. I can't see the number of replies for some reason. Like I can't see the thread, unless of course he like, I don't know, is there a way he might have turned off mentions, but let's just say when I texted him the other day when I saw this and I just said RIP your mentions, man. So I don't know where the replies are. Why can't I see that? I wonder if like something got turned off or something.
Did he mute
it? But maybe. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but
I don't either.
Anyway, there were
several enough to mute things most of the time.
There were several dozen replies within minutes of me seeing the tweet. And so like this was not this was not short. But anyway, so like so that's a problem. And that is a problem that I don't think Elon Musk cares to deal with, to be honest. And as long as he is and this would be true whether or not he owned Twitter or not, but as long as he's willing to call people out publicly, he is setting 400,000 people on them inadvertently. So, I mean, that's kind of a problem. And by the way, Elon, that's one of the problems that you're going to be expected to solve when you are in charge. So keep that in mind.
Maybe he's just getting it out all now before he actually owns the company.
Right. And I guess we need to wrap this up because we're going long. But the last thing that I want to say here is that I'm very nervous about a platform that is basically essential to my job being owned by a guy who started a tunneling company because he was stuck in traffic one day. Now, there are two sides to that.
Yeah.
The first side is that he has an actually fairly respectable tunneling company based on the fact that he got bored in traffic one day, that he got stuck in traffic one day. Like, he has actually built up this company and turned it into a thing. Major props for that. But at the same time, did he really have to do that? I don't know. So I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, I'm very nervous about that. And as a member of the media, I am one of the 25% of users that generates 97% of the content on Twitter. But it makes me a little bit nervous. I would be lying if I said that I am 100% confident in the future of Twitter under the ownership of Elon Musk.
So my counter to that, if you want to call it a counter, is that while Elon Musk is the public face, positively or negatively, for SpaceX and for Tesla and for the Boring Company, and I guess eventually for Twitter, assuming that everything goes through, and
which it may not.
Which it may not. I mean, that's they're next week, and this is the problem with a situation that I said at the beginning is so fluid that they're.
Yeah.
When this comes out, it could be done. I mean, who knows? I hope not.
Yeah.
But going back to what I was saying is that he's one person, right? He's the face of the company, but what makes or breaks the success of any of those companies, and this may sound obvious, but it's the people that he's hired, the talent.
Totally agree.
Right?
Totally agree.
And so, yes, he's going to be the face of Twitter. Yes, I'm sure he's going to come in and kind of like when a new president comes in and they've made those promises, right? Like, I've got day one, we're going to sign these bills,
right.
I think he's probably going to clean house, especially in the upper echelons of the company, and bring in people that he trusts to make the changes that he wants. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the people that are day-to-day running the company. And so this is why I was, I don't want to say nonchalant about it, but, everybody, because it's the easy thing to do, because it made a lot of news, was wringing their hands. Lots of people are hand wringers. I tend not to be. I guess it depends on what the situation is. But
I've seen you wring your hands a little bit. But anyway.
What's that?
I've seen you wring your hands a little bit. Not about this, but about other things. But anyway.
Right.
Go ahead.
At least for this, because I'm taking away an NC approach, because there's so much more to a company than just the one person. And I'm not saying that the people that were wringing their hands are wrong or don't have a reason to do that. I'm just saying maybe, sit on your hands for a few months and give it a chance before we all make snap judgments.
Right.
The internet's about snap judgments. I get that. I do it all the time. Like I said, it just depends on the topic. And like, as you said, you've wrung your hands, but I think it's something, the older I get, the more I sort of tend to be a little more chill with this sort of thing, because most of the time, the way you think it's going to work out
is not the way it works out.
And half the time when these mergers happen, they just don't.
Yeah.
So
and to that end, I should mention that there is a clause in the SEC contract that says that this whole deal can fall apart if Elon Musk directly disparages any of the upper management of Twitter during the time the acquisition is being approved. And he has already done that. He's already done that.
Oh.
Like, the board could tomorrow say, you know what, you violated this contract. That'll be $1 billion, please. Thank you very much. Because it's a $1 billion escape clause,
poison
I believe,
pill, basically, right?
Yeah. But anyway, so like it would cost Elon Musk $1 billion if the board just kind of called him on his crap and said, well, you know what? You are disparaging Twitter's upper management, so SIA wouldn't want to be you. And by the way, we're going to suspend your account just because we're dicks. Anyway, so there is that. But and then like the final thoughts are, I mean, I know I've been a bit doom and gloomy on this podcast, and I don't necessarily want to be, because like I said at the beginning, this is probably not going to affect my day-to-day use of Twitter, and that's fine. Having a Republican president, having Donald Trump as president, did not affect my day-to-day life as a citizen of the United States. I recognize that fully. And you know what? Having Joe Biden as president has not affected my day-to-day life as a citizen. So, like, as much as we like to hand-wring over this, this is going to be the equivalent of, if so-and-so becomes president, I'm moving to Canada. Nobody's calling a U-Haul truck.
Exactly.
So we're all going to be here on Twitter tomorrow. And we'll all be here on Twitter. Excuse me. We'll all be here on Twitter a year from now. So let's just move on from there.
And the thing that I keep thinking about, right? I've made a few sports references and analogies anyway, but if you're a fan of a small market team, and I sort of almost feel like, I don't want to say Twitter is a small market team, but Twitter hasn't really grown. It hasn't changed. And I think I was talking about this earlier, but in
right.
like 5, 6, 7 years, I mean, it's kind of just been there.
Yeah.
And I feel like they haven't made any significant changes to go one way or the other. I would much rather, because this was actually my fear with Twitter. I'm like, if Twitter goes away, I mean, I'm pretty much done with social media because I don't really use Facebook. I mean, there might be something that comes along, but
Yeah.
I have met so many people through,
Twitter.
being connected to people on Twitter talking about the stuff that we normally talk about on here. So,
Well, to
it's
be fair,
important
you
to
live
me.
in Iron Gate. There's no other people there. Couldn't let that pass. Couldn't let that pass. Sorry.
So, I'm hoping to see them take a swing for the fences, right? If you're in sports, that's trading away some 2 or 3 staple players for that one superstar, right? It may
Right.
not work out, but at least you went out swinging, and that's what I'm hoping for with Twitter. Hopefully they don't go out swinging, but that they
Hopefully they
are
don't go out,
willing
but
to
yeah.
take some chances, and hopefully it works out for the best.
Yeah, agree. And again, maybe this will be great. The greatest thing to happen to the platform. Totally willing to believe that could happen. So, but for now, we're just going to have to wait and see. And while you're waiting and seeing, we're going to go ahead and close out this episode of the podcast. Please consider subscribing to this podcast if you enjoyed it. And if you really enjoyed it, I would love it if you would write a review for the show. If you want some early access, jump onto Patreon at patreon.com/benefitofadoubt. You can write to the show by visiting benefitofadoubt.com/contact. I'd like to thank co-producer Cliff for all of his hard work behind the scenes and for coming on and talking about Twitter. And by the way, if you're a Musk bro, you can ignore everything that I just said in the last 15 seconds. But most of all, and as always, I'd like to thank you for listening and for giving me the benefit of the doubt.